presentation and for setting the scene for this second afternoon of our ENDORSE 2021 conference. My name is Florence Ranson, and I will be your moderator for this new track 3 of the conference. Track 3 is dedicated to innovation, and this is what we're going to be talking about this afternoon and tomorrow afternoon. Now, I would like first of all to answer a Slido survey that is online using hashtag ENDORSE 2021, so hashtag ENDORSE 2021, to answer our Slido survey throughout the afternoon. You will also, of course, be more than welcome to ask questions during the various presentations. So do write your questions in the chat function of the platform, and we hope that our speakers will have time to answer them throughout the various presentations and at the end. As you must have seen, we have a very tight schedule this afternoon, as we do tomorrow as well. So without any further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker to take the floor, Peter Winstanley. Peter is an ontologist from Semantic Arts, and he will be talking to us about the use of upper-level ontology. So Peter, welcome, and over to you. Peter, are you there? Hello, Peter. I saw you a minute ago, so you can't be too far.
Yes, apparently Peter has a problem with his internet connection.
Yeah, Peter, I see you seem disconnected, whereas you were online a minute ago. Very sorry to have this kind of issue. There you are now. I see your name coming up again. It seems you have a connection problem. Right, well, I'm afraid we'll have to wait a little bit longer. And if Peter cannot come back online, we will maybe turn to our second speaker. Let's give it one more minute. At least it gives you all time to settle down and move from the main session into this track 3. For those of you who just arrived a couple of minutes late, let me remind you that this is going to be looking at innovation throughout today and tomorrow for the whole afternoon. So definitely lots of food for thought and lots of new ideas for everyone to share. Now, I don't see Peter coming back, so okay, well, maybe we will move to our second speaker and hope that in the meantime, Peter can come back. So welcome to Aldo Gangemi, who is going to be talking about semantic technologies. Now, Aldo is from the University of Bologna, and he's also working for the Institute of Cognitive Sciences and Technologies of the Italian National Research Council. Aldo, good afternoon, and over to you then.
Good afternoon, Florence. I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, can you see it? Can you see my screen? May I go on? Okay.
We can't see your screen, but we see it. Yes, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Perfect.
Yeah. Before doing that, I wanted to be sure. Okay, so I will present some use cases in Italian public administrations where we use semantic technologies. And in passing, during the presentation, I will point to the techniques that we've used, which are both traditional or state-of-art or even beyond that. Some slides are included here in the presentation are by Giorgia Lodi, Andrea Nuzzolese, Valentina Presutti, Bruno Sartini, and Mattia Spadoni, who are either researchers or technologists working in various at CNR, University of Bologna, and also governmental agencies. So I will follow LOD, like in the publication office video, and for sure we definitely commit to linked open data. In Italy, this has happened in various phases since a long time, but not always enforced by government. So I will show you some of this. There is a general trend anyway to adopt them more and more. So I will present a project, institutional research projects, and the first one will be about Ontopia, which is an ontology network for Italian public administration interoperability on huge dynamic data lakes. ARCO, which is an ontology network that shapes and has made this a heavy lifting of the data from Italian cultural heritage. And then I will show you very, very briefly, time consents, our knowledge graph that is used in many projects for the interoperability based on frame semantics, cognitively grounded frame semantics. So firstly, what do we use when we build a knowledge graph? So this happens from structured data, and definitely this happens by firstly making an ontological analysis of the schema of those data. So basically getting the conceptualization of the domain of knowledge, which in layman terms is what are we talking about? I like a lot this question, is fundamental in all semantic technologies. And then we put this data into knowledge representation language, then we triplify it within knowledge graphs for syntactic interoperability, and then we link them to other data. This happens actually also for data which are not structured, which are semi-structured, like thesauri tables, catalogs, by making knowledge extraction, like it has been implemented recently in Sparkle Anything, which takes any source and converts it into a first knowledge graph form. Then we do the usual thing. What are we talking about? Then we triplify, align, and link. And similarly for a structured text, when we lift data from text, you'll see an example there with our state-of-the-art tool, which is a machine reader that produces a knowledge graph directly out of text. Okay, so say that it's important, on the other hand, not only to use state-of-the-art practices, but also to look at what the data are and what the possible problems that arise. For example, this is an example that could be useful for anyone. When you find syntactic problems in a knowledge graph, you can find errors due to data types that are not correct, or could be logical glitches. For example, in this case, a guy has indicated a mail and a telephone instead of the email. In this case, the email is actually two, but they include them with a semicolon, which is not the correct way, and this actually presents a problem at a logical understanding of what they are going to do, or even design limitation. For example, here say he wants to put an email, but indicating also the person that should be the reference for that email, but this was not designed in the original schema. So just by looking at the problems that arise in data, you can discover a lot about the problems and of adoption of these technologies and how you can overcome them. So now, very quickly, Ontopia. So this is was used for governance and especially supported by one of the previous governments in Italy. As you probably know, they change with a certain frequency. And it was, the intention was to create an ontology network that could control and be used as a dashboard and data shaping for a huge data lake. So it's a common language that facilitates data exchange, and it also defines a formal model and paves the way for the creation of more data schemes. And it was under the responsibility of this governmental agency, Italian Digital Agency. These are actually, okay. And this was, we had many vertical domains ranging from tourism, transparency of public sector, transport, higher education and research, public services, procurement, sensors, culture. Okay, and in the vertical stack, you can see how these ontologies are organized from the foundational level that links to reusable practices, foundational ontologies, design patterns, etc., to the core level, like not talking about persons, organizations, like the EU also is supporting, and supporting level that are reused across many domains. For example, temporal ontologies or ontologies about price offers, social media, etc. The domain level that is about the specific things, what we are talking about actually, so accommodations. or public events, cultural heritage, etc. Then there is a technical approach that actually, considering the Italian application profile, for example, within the APIT of the European Union, we connect that to the ontology components we build into the network, as well as to controlled vocabularies that use the minimal semantics allowed by SCOS. And then we align them to external ontologies and controlled vocabularies, porting them to the web of data and aligning further with more techniques. One particular spin-off of this project, besides the huge data lake effort done in this previous agency of the Italian government, is in this European project WOW that aims at using this approach to water health. So bridging data from water consumption and pollution and correlating to environmental data, to health data and disease diffusion. And then there is also a co-creation program. As you will see, it's very important to involve many different stakeholders in the process of producing these knowledge graphs for public administrations. Now let's see a longer example with ARCO. ARCO is called architectural knowledge, is used for, it's created a knowledge graph that for Italian cultural heritage, and comes from traditional catalogs that are developed with their own practices, but then have been evolved by using semantic technologies. In numbers, currently we have an ontology network with 7 modules and 500 axioms, 5,000 axioms, 1,000 predicates, and we reuse the other ontologies, of course. And the data are currently growing and growing, and now we have kind of almost 200 million triples and a lot of links. And there are also scientific publications related to that. So very quickly, this is just a summary of the ontologies and the kind of visualization we make of them and the source code and etc. And we have examples like, for example, we can ask, we start by doing this extreme design process for designing ontologies and data. So we can ask, what is the conservation status of the cultural property X, which interventions have been proposed, etc. We can ask it and do something about that. And then the knowledge graph has been used to create this new web portal of the Ministry of Cultural Heritage Agency that deals with cataloging all cultural heritage in Italy, which is by no means a secondary aspect of Italian landscape. We have used these methods that is based on loosely inspired by extreme programming, but also to ontology design practices. And so we take into account the scenarios, competency questions, then we produce a draft ontology, then it's revised by using an iterative process. Okay, I can skip this. So the idea is that then is to make it usable for many, many different stakeholders. So this can be reused easily by using GitHub. There is a Docker with all in one elements and tools that you need to apply them, and it's published on Zenodo and linked open vocabularies, data hub, and released with a clear license. These are very important things that are in order to enhance the ability to reuse these things. There is also a user guide accompanied by videos for using the overall knowledge graph in these tools. Now, actually, this has evolved into a scientific approach. So the idea is that, okay, now we have this conversion that is supported efficiently, but how we can use it for doing the real science, okay? That is the requirements coming from. It's not enough, not just to convert catalogs, it's to using them in the real life. Because sometimes cataloging is seen as an activity which is just for, general metadata, okay? But it's not about only metadata. You need to do things with that. So I will show you some very quick examples that use state-of-the-art technologies in knowledge representation, machine learning, and machine-human interaction. So in one case, in archaeology, we have to understand what the archaeologists want to do, for example. And then we started by cross-domain design, for example, considering data that deal with history or geology or archaeology itself, because otherwise you can't really attain to the different levels, the different aspects, the different perspectives of this knowledge and help the real people working on this data. So you can have very different questions, like how has an earthquake occurred in the location of the archaeological site? This could come from history, not only from geology, or which is the oldest, newest stratigraphic unit. And this is done, for example, by joining data from an agency that collects all the historical data about earthquakes. Then you have landscape archaeology. Then you can have a new way of describing this heterogeneous data in a unified way by providing ontologies that are able to link what we are talking about, because basically they are talking about very similar things, although with different perspectives. Another thing is to have the ability to address other types of knowledge. For example, in cultural heritage, symbolic knowledge is very important, but sometimes it's not enough. Now, you have icon class, which is another important vocabulary developed for adding what is contained in the works of art, but it's partial. Okay, so you need to improve it. In order to improve it, for example, a PhD student realized for ARCO a neural network linear classifier in order to complete the coverage of these icon class codes. This is just an example of what happens in that case. Also, we support more and more techniques coming from, for example, to this pattern-driven design that is applied also to visualization. Of course, we don't have so much time, so I won't really explore in detail of this, but the slides will be available. So here, the idea is to identify clusters of concepts that are like frames that operate both at the cognitive level and the visualization level. So, for example, here you can describe a knowledge graph from multiple viewpoints. For example, the components or the locations or the measurements about a work of art. And then this could be done interactively with novel new generation tools that are able to do that. For example, you can take one work of art and visualize it with the help of a map because you want to talk about locations. And another one would be about measurements, and then you can provide specific measurements with a different interface metaphor. And parts also could be differently supported by isolating elements in the. And finally, another use case was about having virtual environments, which goes even more. This beyond the state of the art. It's not just reusing mainstream technologies or methods, but it's about testing new ways of bridging, for example, very different fields like virtual reality research and semantic technologies. In this case, for example, we navigate the virtual environment by using the knowledge graph. Okay, I will go pretty quick about that. You can see this mapping knowledge graph to objects and spaces in the virtual reality, and then you have an iconography room, and then the class iconography of the model is transformed into a room having multiple niches, one for each object property in the model, for example. And you can see what happens. Okay, you have at the same time a virtual, real life virtual environment jointly with the conceptual information that provides way of accessing different rooms. For example, the use case was applied to the Cenacolo by Leonardo da Vinci in Milan. Okay, yeah, I can continue. You can see many of that, and it's I put them here just because they are quite suggestive. But the important thing is joining different approaches. In this case, the two fields of virtual reality and semantic technology weren't really talking with each other. So the ongoing strategy is to create a distributed laboratory of research and ideas focused on the cultural heritage catalog and involving very different stakeholders from universities to public administrations and citizens. So last bit, as I promised, we have this large knowledge graph that tries to make things interoperable even when the semantics looks pretty different. For example, linguistic and lexical resources are considered with the semantics typically very far away from the semantics of data in, for example, Wikidata or official resources. So we managed to put them together according to a general frame semantics that, of course, I'm not going to explain here. This is an example that we obtained with this graph by understanding, for example, the semantics of a sentence by using a state-of-the-art machine reading tool called Fred, which is linked here, and linking it to existing resources that could go to from Wikipedia to existing frames on how to consider the semantics of a particular entity that could be the distance or the selling or a single market. Okay, so that was it. And the take-home messages to conclude. So applying semantic technologies is not straightforward from research practices. We need actually deep empathy with domain experts and understanding of existing methods, resources, and habits of data management. And modeling and data management patterns would emerge very soon, sometimes in an unexpected way. Could emerge from an interface, from talking to someone, to joining experts talking about their own stuff. And life would be easier for everyone anyway in that case. And different paradigms, knowledge-based, machine learning, software and web engineering need integration for exploiting them appropriately. And to complete, I return on my original claim, multiple data with different structuring bear a common semantics. It is our task to disentangle it and provide it for the common good.
Thank you very much, Aldo. And we have a question for you, if you can give me an answer in 2 minutes. And that is, how do you use the location as a tool for visualizing, searching, and linking the features?
Okay. Location can be used in many ways, of course. One example that I did was about, can you still see my screen?
Yes, we have your screen,
yeah, okay. So in this case, for example, the location is part of the specification in the ontology, no? So the point is that you have an ontology in which locations are encoded in some way, no? Then you have a pattern emerging as a view within the data model, the ontology that you have. Then you can make the user choose what is the view to be considered, and he or she could choose between components, measurements, or locations. For example, if he chooses locations, then you can use appropriate metaphor by casting the location information into a map, for example. Okay, or you can cast the parts into a partonymy graph, a component graph, or you can cast it on for measurement in other ways. The location is pretty straightforward. It's the one that is used a lot in data meshing, for example. So by projecting on a map, typically what the data about a certain cultural heritage entity. There are, of course, there are nice problems, like, for example, not all cultural heritage entities have a precise location. So there is no a complete georeferencing of them. In that case, you have to provide a very generic location, provided that you have, for example, you can arrive them inferencing through, it is contain a collection. This collection is in a building. The building is as an address, and then you can infer something. But of course, this sometimes is not so easy to perform. Then we have to be satisfied with the approximate locations. I hope to have answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aldo. So I understand that Peter is back online with a functioning connection this time. So Peter, can I invite you to join us? Peter Winstanley, for those of you who weren't with us in the very beginning of this session, is an ontologist from Semantic Arts, and he will raise with us the use of upper-level ontology. Peter, yes, I see you on my screen, so I hope this time everything works fine. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Laurent. Can you see my screen okay?
We do see your screen.
Great, okay. Apologies to everybody, my computer crashed twice. It's just really unfortunate. As Florence said, I would like to discuss today whether or not an upper-level ontology is useful. And I would like to start with a domestic challenge, a tale of two clothes stores, the wardrobe or closet versus the drawer.
Peter, I'm sorry, can I ask you to put your presentation in slideshow mode so that it occupies the whole of your screen? Thank you.
Good. Okay. So when we take a look at the draw, what's in it? We can see a little bit of what's in it, some T-shirts, but we're not quite sure how many. There's a blue one with leaves on. Basically, without lifting everything out and doing an awful lot of work, we can't even tell what's in, how to sort things out, where we would put other stuff in order to make sure that there was like with like. Whereas in the wardrobe situation, we can have a look very quickly, see what we've got. There are shirts, there are trousers, there are suits, and so on. And it's well organized.
It looks like we have lost Peter. I'm awfully sorry. Peter, can you connect again? Certainly isn't Peter's lucky day in terms of connections. Right, well, let me inquire, just in case Peter cannot join us again immediately, whether our next speaker is ready to take the floor.
Yes.
Hedi, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, very good. Let's give Peter another 30 seconds or so. No, I don't see him coming back. So thanks very much for jumping in at short notice. So ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to welcome Hedi Karray. Hedi is from the Toulouse INP National Engineering School, and he will be looking at standardized interoperability to continue our journey through innovation this afternoon. So Hedi, over to you, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much. So, hello everyone. My name is Hedi Karray. I'm associate professor at ENIT, an engineering school of Polytechnic Institute of Toulouse in France. And today I will talk about the role of ontologies and interoperability to generate value from data in industry. So the spread of new web technologies has led to organizational transitions that are the root of the digital revolution. So this latter is manifested by the emergence of the extended enterprises, renewal of processes, emergence of new services and products. So this revolution has led to the fusion of the physical, social, and digital dimensions of our environment. Industry 4.0 or digital manufacturing is an example of booming physical social cyber systems. This phenomenon is based on the optimization of processes throughout an organization's entire value chain through the use of digital technologies that enable intelligent interconnection between objects, services, data, and people. In such interconnected environment, big flows of data are generated. And this data become the main asset of the company, and it should be shared and monetized to generate value for business. So there is different manners to represent data value chain process. Let's take the simplest one. So it's designed as 4 steps process, including generation, collection, analytics, and exchange. This process takes advantages from the use and adoption of ICT trends and new paradigms, including Internet of Things, cyber physical systems, big data, cloud computing, machine learning, explainable AI, and semantic interoperability solutions, mostly related to semantic web and knowledge graphs. So, as said before, data is a main asset of an industrial company. It's considered as the new oil, and oil can't be largely used as it is. It really needs refinement and a long process to be exploited. So we don't use oil in our cars, but we use petroleum products. So to generate value, data need to be processed promptly and correctly to identify meaningful information and can extract knowledge and insight from the data itself and make a positive impact for the organization. So unfortunately, it exists different barriers to reach such generation of value in industry. Let's mention firstly that according to the World Economic Forum, 70% of production data are not used. The potential also in some reports of World Economic Forum, the potential value of data sharing across industrial players, particularly in view of optimizing manufacturing processes, is estimated at over $100 billion. So but a lot of barriers has been identified for this value generation. Those barriers can be classified as technical ones and managerial ones. From technical point of view, barriers can be summarized to interoperability and the data silos, the data accessibility, the inefficient workflows, and the quality of data. Concerning managerial barriers, it includes the ignorance, the lack of strategy, the lack of means, and especially the resistance to change. Sometimes it's not simple and safe to accept and trust algorithms outputs from business perspective. So comparing to the technical barriers, ontologies as a graph-driven approach are presented as one of the valuable solutions, as we seen in the previous presentation of Aldo. So ontologies structure and represent the meaning behind data and support the process allowing to transform data to insights. So maybe the next presentation with Peter will provide more thoughts about ontologies. So the more than 20 years of research and development activities show that ontologies are useful for information integration, data integration, information retrieval, semantic enhancement, knowledge management, and reasoning capabilities. So it can address the technical barriers that I just mentioned. So since 2000, a lot of initiatives have been launched to develop ontologies for industrial domains. But unfortunately, most of them fails to drive interoperability, and it couldn't get traction. And it is still greeted with some skepticism in many circles. So this fail is due to some typical reasons that we identified. First, let's say that it exists too many ontologies that are built in ad hoc ways without a common methodology or any reuse strategy. Even in the same domains, those ontologies are developed from different perspectives and according specific or local needs. So until today, also, there is no commonly accepted quality control standards for ontologies. Also, ontologies are poorly documented and there is a lack of training. So all of these reasons make ontologies have short life. So today there is, unfortunately, a sad fact, let's say that, ontologies, which are usually promoted as a valuable solution for interoperability, they are often not interoperable. And this interoperability problem concerns different levels. So it concerns formats, syntax, terminology, context, logics, and semantics. So a global consistency between ontologies should be addressed to empower the role of ontologies to reach data interoperability. And this is the scope of the two initiatives, the Industrial Ontologies Foundry and OntoCommons. Two initiatives dealing with ontologies interoperability in the industrial domains. IOF, which becoming a unit of WEGI, aiming to create a set of core and open reference interoperable ontologies that spans the entire domain of digital manufacturing by providing principles and best practices by which high-quality ontologies can be developed to support interoperability. And also by providing an organizational framework and governance process that ensure conformance to principles and best practices for IOF ontologies lifecycle. So here we have the structure of ontology hierarchy adopted in IOF to keep ontologies interoperable under the same top-level ontology, or let's say upper-level ontologies, as named in the presentation of Peter that we will see later. So the idea is to drive an ontology development process driven by top-level ontology and then facilitate application ontologies integration. The second initiative, which already collaborating with the first one, is the H2020 project OntoCommons. OntoCommons aims to coordinate activities with relevant stakeholders at European and international level to work together in developing a common ontology ecosystem for data documentation, including ontologies and tools. The project aims also to provide real industrial use cases to validate the ecosystem and show its added value to reach cross-domain interoperability in manufacturing and materials domain. So the ontology commons ecosystem consists of a hierarchy of networked and harmonized ontologies of different levels of generality, from top level or upper level to application ontology following FAIR principles. So it includes also a set of tools and methodologies selected from the available state-of-the-art, covering the full range of ontology lifecycle activities from ontology development to reasoning and database integration. It includes also a set of specifications for ontology that will provide full compatibility between tools and ontologies that will facilitate the development of domain ontologies through a set of specifications with respect of FAIR principles. In OntoCommons, the harmonization of ontologies will be driven through a top reference ontology according a multi-level alignment approach, including syntactic, terminological, semantic, and formatting alignments of ontologies. Also, OntoCommons adopts a pluralistic approach, assuming the existence of many ontologies in the same domain, assuming or adopting few top-level ontologies, and also consider those existing top-level ontologies for a terminological alignment. In OntoCommons, we address two kinds of interoperability. First one is the intra-ontology interoperability, or what we call the vertical interoperability, that will enable interoperability within the same top-level ontology. The second is the cross-ontology interoperability that will enable terminological interoperability between ontologies coming from different top-level ontologies. Such level of alignment can support data sharing, since it can provide a translation of data into another type of documentation framework. For example, from a relational database to RDF, for example. So to conclude, the main idea is really to invite all to join this collaborative efforts to build together interoperable ontologies and then shape the future of semantic interoperability to generate value from data in the industrial future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Hedi. And thanks for jumping in at short notice. I have a question for you, actually, and it's regarding Onto Commons and IOF. Have they been able to create a global network, or is there a geographical basis or bias?
So it's, I mean, it's international. IOF is really international because it's the main people who created IOF. They are from Europe and from North America. And Onto Commons, even it's a European-funded project, the idea is to work on the international level. So it's really to get stakeholders that put people together from all the world to work together on ontologies.
Okay. Thank you very much, Hedi. And it seems like, unfortunately, Peter has not been able to reconnect. So we will continue with the rest of our program, and we will enter the break and solution room with our next three speakers. We will start by Laurent Vinesse. Laurent is from the European Commission, and he will take us through the Ref2Link project. Laurent, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And good afternoon to you. And
good afternoon,
please,
everybody.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. So I will start sharing my presentation.
We have your screen, but it's not in full screen. There we are.
Yeah, I will
okay.
change.
Yes.
So can you see it now completely?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so my presentation will be about Ref2Link. So it's
Laurent, you are frozen on my screen. It looks like you also have a connection problem. The joys of online sessions. Yes, it looks like Laurent is disconnected for the moment. Is Rink online, just in case Laurent cannot come back immediately?
Yes, I am online.
Rink? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll give Laurent 10 more seconds. No, it doesn't look like he's coming back. So, Rink, I'm going to turn to you. So, Rink Kruk is the second speaker of this break and solution room. And Rink is from the Nationaal Geografisch Instituut in the Netherlands. So, Rink, please, over to you then. And I hope you don't break down or your connection doesn't break down.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. I'm starting the sharing of the presentation shortly. There we go. Okay. So, Florence, thank you very much for presenting me and pronouncing my name such in a nice way. I'm from the National Mapping Agency of Belgium, and we are working on. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm Dutch, but I work for the Belgian government.
Hello?
Hello? Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Laurent, we can hear you. But in the meantime, since you were not coming back online, we asked Rink to start his presentation, and I will come back to you as soon as he's finished. Is that okay for you?
Okay.
Yes,
Unless
thank
if
you.
my connection fails.
So stay tuned. We'll improvise. No worry.
Yeah. So thank you. In fact, my presentation is is a little bit from a different perspective than many other presentations that have been given today, because this one is really departing from the demand for data and not from pure organizing theoretically or technically the data. So why is there such a high need for a common reference frame for data? Is because the emergency services in Belgium, in the event of big incidents and events like a NATO summit with VIPs from all over the world in Brussels, we lack, in fact, a good base of information sharing. Everybody has its own type of information, managing it, and this is really a problem. And there's another problem, that is that all the information is encoded in text, and especially if it's busy, then it becomes unmanageable. So we've started with a couple of small projects with regard to uniform cartography for wildfire fighting, and also for supporting logistically and also from a safety point of view the organization of the NATO summit in 2018, where we came up with solutions to have a common understanding about information and plot it on a map, display it on a map. Yeah, I have a small movie about the NATO summit, but I will skip it because of time constraints. So we build up, in fact, a very strong network of stakeholders in the emergency services management. And those partners, normally are not really collaborating, but they live in their own worlds, like the military, the police, the health, the 112 emergency centers, the firefights, civil protection, interior affairs, the NATO, and so on. And the National Mapping Agency, as a relatively small and neutral partner, they brought together the needs of and also the capabilities of working together. And we started to commonly define the data that was needed by everybody, because all this data that is used by the partners is now locked up in silos, and it's very hard to work together. And once you start breaking down the silos, then there is also a need for standardization of the information, have similar definitions and symbolizations. The importance of having graphically and common visualizations of information is demonstrated by these examples. This is a map from the police dispatching center. This is a map that is used in a police van. This is another map that is used in another police van. This is used by the firefighters as a sampling map. And this map is used by the 112 emergency center, emergency number. I don't know if anyone has noticed, but all these maps describe the same place. Well, the first 20 times that I saw these pictures, I have not noticed. So that's why we come to a standardized base map, which is not the Google map, which you see on the left side, but the emergency services decided to use the more trustworthy and controllable national map that is made by the National Mapping Agency. And we also improve their map to address the needs of the emergency services. So why is it so important to have a map and to have the same map? Because then it's much easier to communicate about incidents, about your location of incidents, and about resources, both on paper and on screen, on the command post or crisis centers, no matter what. So our intention is that we have the same information accessible in every role and at every place, and that everybody can play its own autonomous role. So we are currently now thinking about what could be used as a platform for a hub to, or kind of roundabout of all the data that is collected, because right now the data that is used by emergency services is really fragmented. It's not findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So we are putting efforts in making this data, we collect the data and we bring it together, integrate it, so that the emergency services can depart from all the same type of data, that they don't have to collect and manage and host it by themselves in each small center. With that, we avoid discrepancies. We also develop universal symbols and definitions of different types of data, so that people understand the same features in the same way, and which enhances the collaboration between emergency services. And it gives immediate insight in the work of others, and having this kind of overview gives a peace of mind and enables a rapid autonomous response by all parties involved in crises and big events. So here you see a few examples of types of data that we have started working on. This is about uniformization and sharing of this kind of collection of data, which is about accessibility of the terrains, in the case of wildfire fighting, where to find water, but also about risks. And it's not only about camping areas and military areas, but it can be all kinds of risks. Could also be safe havens, pipelines with dangerous projects within perimeters, planned itineraries of the VIPs, but also the more standard things like kilometer and hectometer posts, addresses, hydrants, weather information. All this information, especially in Belgium, is fragmented over all types of different government organizations. And this is really a pain in the dark space of the emergency services. But it is also quite tedious work, and to have everybody agree on the common types of information. But we managed, in fact, to persuade all stakeholders to start to collaborate and to build libraries of data. This is still a tremendous job to do, but there are a couple of challenges. We are talking often about sensitive data, so access rights, they are dependent over context and time. And this is making it a little bit more different than just pure open link data. There's also a need to have strategic and operational information available and shared over the different disciplines. But how will we manage that? How are we going to push and pull the types of information? And another issue and challenge is the harmonization. But this is in fact working. It's just a lot of work, and we can't deal with all the types of data at once. So we prioritize the different types of data with the emergency services and the crisis center. And sometimes we end up with data sets that in some parts of the country still drawn on paper maps or in Excel tables, and in some parts of the country they have all the best top of the bill APIs in place to distribute data. And the big question is, are we going to tackle that first regionally, then nationally? Well, from our point of view, of course, we will deal with it nationally. And then at the EU level, are we going to put hands together and start working together at the European level? It's another challenge is to have an overview of the enormous quantity of types of data and information. We managed to make a big list of I don't know, 150, but it can be hundreds of types of information that is can be used by emergency services. And how can we make that data available to the emergency service in a way that can be handled? And how can we focus on the spot? Can we just focus on the right information and forget about the rest? Because if we don't, if in a certain case, then we don't want to see all hydrants, for example, or all police cars, but we just need to see a few police cars that are connected to a certain accident. So how are we going to manage that? And how can we still have a good view on the bigger picture? And the biggest question, what would be a suitable platform to exchange all that data? So this is more or less the issues that we are right now struggling with. And the most pregnant question is, what would be a suitable platform to exchange this data between the enormous variety of end users? So I hope that someone or some people can help me or give me a few suggestions in the chat, or just send me a mail or connect to me on LinkedIn. But we are striving towards a national infrastructure for location data that is needed for collaboration of emergency services. And once this infrastructure is constructed, of course, it can also be used for all kinds of other government services. But there's always the we always have to be careful about privacy and privacy that could be in danger when handling this type of information. But thank you very much for your attention, and I hope I've been sufficiently clear to you. And please reach back to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rink. Thank you very much. And I think we can now go back to Laurent. I see he's online. Laurent, are you there?
Yes. So I'm sorry, I understand my previous presentation has been cut somehow. I was not aware, but
we lost you. So, you know, the screen froze and you had disappeared.
So it was a good rehearsal for me. I will start again.
So yes, please. So ladies and gentlemen, Laurent Vinesse, who should have been our previous speaker, is now number 2 in the list, and then we'll turn to Fernando. Laurent, over to you.
Okay. So can you still hear me?
We hear you, we see your screen.
Okay. You see the full screen then?
No, you need to put it in full screen mode.
Okay. Should be better.
That's it. Exactly. Thank you.
Okay, so Ref2Link. So Ref2Link is a solution, it's a tool developed by the European Commission, and it's been supported by the ESA Square program, and then it's going to join the Digital Europe program. It's been developed under legislation, interoperability tools, along with the LEOS tools. There will be later presentation about LEOS. It was developed as a tool initially for the legal service of the European Commission, but of course it can now fit the needs of many more organizations or public institutions. So basically, it's a reference and citations extractor for IT systems, which have to handle unstructured legal text, or if you prefer, text without annotations. And so the vast majority, I will show examples so that it becomes very concrete to you. This text appear shows up like this. So it's a bunch of text, and if you look very carefully in it, you can detect with your human eyes that there are many legal citations, so regulation, so law, case law, with in some case subdivision in the text. So the main purpose of ref2link is to automate this. So it will extract all the citations and of law and case law and create web links on top of them. And actually, how I designed this this slide, I did not annotate myself this text. I just use a utility which is based on ref2link, which is called linkpad, and just by copying and pasting the same text back and forth in a PowerPoint, it automatically created all the links to the target system. So the target system, what are they? They are the main repository of EU law, or Lex, or case law, like Curia, and we use also it for our internal needs, so that you have links to administrative systems of the Commission. You also have the European e-justice portal, and so on. So depending on the type of resource, you can configure the tool so that it create links to one or several repositories. But there is one step further. You imagine that this is already very useful for the end users, like for instance web contributors to this kind of tools. There is one step further, because it's not enough to create web links, but in some case you also have the possibility to connect to linked data repositories and to pull extra metadata that are associated with the legal citation of reference. So in this case, in this regulation, we can also extract the full title of the regulation. We can extract the publication number of the official number of the official journal, in which it was published, and whether it's still in force or not. So these are linked data compliant with the ELI standards, and of course you still have the possibility to navigate directly to EURLEX through this ELI link. So for end users, this is very useful because they can decide based on additional metadata which has been automatically extracted from the text, whether they want to navigate further in the repository. So a few words about the feature of the tool. So it's based on the detection rules, which are declarative. How the detection works is based on classical text pattern techniques, regular expression to name them. So at this point, I generally have to apologize for not using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and this kind of technologies. But you have to be aware that this tool is in use for more than 5 years in the legal service. It's domain-based. It means you can create bundles of detection rules adapted to your domain. In terms of detection, it can handle very complex patterns like list of citations, list of reference. And this, once the reference and citations are detected, it can be reflected in different outputs depending on your business or your use case. So the most obvious use case is the one we have illustrated. It means it is creating web links for the direct consumption by users. But you can imagine other ones like having footnotes instead of direct links, or you can even export in different data structure if you want to populate a database a triple store or any other graph database system. So all this is based on European standards, so ELI and ECLI for case law. It's multilingual, so you can input the same legal text in any of the 24 EU national laws, and it comes with out-of-the-box detection bundles adapted for EU law in each of the language, meaning that you can work in multilingual mode, or you can work in a single language mode. And if you know the language of your text, it's better to work in a monolingual mode, because obviously it processes the text faster.
Laurent, you seem to have a connection problem again. You have disappeared from my screen and I don't see you there. Okay, well, I hope you can pick up your presentation where you left it. In a few minutes from now, I will now ask Fernando to step in with his part of the presentation so that we don't lose too much time. Fernando Nubla Durango. Fernando is also from the European Commission. Fernando, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Good. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, Fernando, I'll hand over the floor to you and hope that Laurent can join us again afterwards to finish his presentation.
Okay, thank you. I will quickly share my screen. Do you see it? Yeah. Okay, perfect.
We do, all fine.
Thank you. So I'm Fernando Nubla from the European Commission, and I want to present you LEOS project. So let's go for it. So about LEOS. LEOS is a legislation editing open software. So we had a mission, and we still have it, that is to make the legislation drafting more efficient. We know that it's a complex process, the drafting of legislation, and we want to help the drafters. We want to help them with an online tool, and also we want to help them in the drafting. We want that they focus on the content and not on the structure. Nowadays, drafters, they spend a lot of time trying to understand how they need to put the paragraphs, subparagraphs, they need to put some colors or not, how to format the tables. We want that they forget all about that and they only focus on the content. That is, we will have better legislation. So we started in long time ago under the ISA program. We moved to the ISA Square program, and now that is ending in this 2021, we will move to the new Digital Europe program. So the project will continue under this program. We offer an open source solution that is delivered under the European Union public license. So any public administration or any person interested can take it and can use it. So the problem was, as I said before, that the drafting of legislation is a complex process. There are a lot of stakeholders. There are a lot of communications between people drafting the documents, sometimes with paper versions, sometimes with one version that you have in your Outlook, sometimes with another that you have in your disk. So we want to improve this, and we want to help everyone dealing with all these versions that normally no one knows where are they. So that's why we designed this solution. This solution has some pillars and are all of these ones, and I will show you live in a minute. So as I said, it's important the structure. We want that they don't need to take care about the structure. We enforce the rules, and they only need to add the content, the important content. We control the versions, so all the versions are on the same tool. Everyone will have available the latest version at any time. We allow to import from different sources. We know that when you start legislation, normally you don't start from zero. You always take some inspiration from other laws. So you can import, in this case, from the official journal of the European Commission. We allow the users to edit the test, and with plugins to add images, tables, and formulas. And then we jump to the collaborative aspect. So we have a tool to do comments and suggestions to be able to work on the test and comment it. And we also have the collaboration feature. As I said, it's an online tool. Everyone has access to it, and you can co-work at the same time with your colleagues. So I will go now to show you the application as it is right now. I will do a quick demo as we don't have much time. So this is Leos, okay? You see the logo of the European Commission because it's the instance that we are using in the European Commission right now. We are piloting it, but you can adapt it to your needs. As I said, this is an open source project. You can take it and you can use in your public administration. So as a normal editor, we have left side where we have the different navigation pane where you can scroll through the content. And in the middle, we have what we call the legal test in this case. Okay, so if you are familiar with the European regulation of the European Parliament and the Council, you will find this test, and you will see that we have different parts already. So we have some citations that you can just edit them, or if you want, you can delete it. So for instance, I'm going to delete this citation. And you see that the citation has been deleted. You always see the latest version of the content. I can edit recitals, for instance, and you see how the toolbar is appearing with the different options. So depending on the type of content, you can add some plugins or others. So for instance, we know that in the recitals we can put some words in italic. We know that, for instance, in the citations you cannot put any word in italic or in bold. If I click on save, then the content is saved automatically. But let's go to the article that is a bit more complex. So as you see already, the toolbar has more options. And what I said about the structure, that we don't want that the users, they need to take care about it, is really important when you start drafting an article, for instance. So if you want to create, let's say, your list, you see that the second level of the list is in letters. If you go to another level, is in Romance. If you go to the next one, Arabics, and if you go to the next one, to the last one, in indent. We cannot go further. We control all these rules. So we know that in the commission and for this type of document, this is the structure that you must follow. You must follow the paragraphs and the list with this structure of numbering, and only 4 levels of list. If you click outside, as I said before, you will be saving the content. I want to show you some nice features that we have that can help the drafters. For instance, we have what we call the internal references. When you are drafting legislation, most of the time you need to reference to other parts of the text. So in this case, I'm going to reference the Article 2, first paragraph. As you see here, we are automatically generating the label. The user, they don't need to remember this formatting. They don't need to remember that first goes the article in a number and then first paragraph as letters. So we do that for them. If you click OK, you see here that we have the reference done. I can save it. And now let's see what happens if the Article 2 becomes Article 3, because we add a new article in the middle. So I just going to add a new article in the middle, and you will see how the reference has been automatically updated. So it's still pointing to the first paragraph, but now it's Article 3, it's not Article 2. And you see also how the numbering of the articles has been updated automatically. As I said, also we have another feature that is important, that is to import from the official journal. So let's say that we want to import from the regulation 2013, 575, a big regulation. So I see the document coming from the EURLES, and I can do my shopping list. So I can say, okay, I'm going to add this recital. I want also to add this recital 8. Can scroll the document, and I can add also some articles. So let's add the article 118. If I click on import, you will see how automatically the recitals and the articles will be imported in the live document that we are editing. Voila, so you see that the recital 3 and recital 4. You already see some links that are appearing. You can guess that is the ref2link library that Laurent was explaining before. So it's integrated in our project, and you can have the direct links to the EURLES to see the regulation. Now that we imported, I want to show you also how you can edit the structure of the document. So we can edit the navigation pane. You can add new articles just by drag and dropping. You can add chapters and then put articles on the chapters. And when you click on save, you will see that automatically the structure will be included in the document. Next feature is the versioning. So we keep track of all the changes that I've been doing. As you see, I have imported some elements. I have updated article 1. I updated the recital 1, and I deleted the citation 4. So I can see them. I can click here and view the versions. I can revert if I want to restart the work because I don't want to have the latest changes. And the most important feature is that I can compare. So I can see exactly what I did since the beginning. So if I take, for instance, the latest version and my current version, you see here that we see that the citation has been deleted. I have added some content and I put it in italics. Then I imported some recitals, so on and so forth. So you see all the changes that I've been doing. If I do a change live in the content, new change, when I save it, you will see on the right side that it's going to be added. So the test is added automatically. And my last feature for this quick presentation, if you have more questions or you want a further presentation, you can contact us, is the comments and suggestions. So as I said, you can check the content, you can highlight some parts of the test, and you can create a comment. So you can create just a comment on this part, and I can post it to all the people that is working in this document. And I can do a suggestion. So the suggestion is a change of the test. So I can suggest to put something more. Let's put a suggestion. I can put it, and you see the track changes. So I want to change this word, in fact, by change suggestion. If I accept it or reject it, I can add this test directly to the content. So this is very handy when you have a lot of people working in the same document, and you want that some of them, they just create comments and suggestions. They don't touch the document. So they can create a change in the test, and you can accept it. So you have the option to accept the change. So this is about the live demo. I wanted just to show you a last part.
I'm sorry, Fernando, but I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up because we're already a bit late.
Okay, no problem. So just I will quickly tell you that we have a community around, and if you want to join the community, you can contact us. So don't hesitate. We can keep in touch, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Fernando. It looks like we have lost Laurent for good, unfortunately, but we have been able to join Peter again. So we will now have the presentation by Peter Winstanley, which we should have had at the beginning of this afternoon. And just as a quick reminder, Peter is an ontologist. He comes from Semantic Arts, and he started his presentation earlier on about the use of upper level ontology. So Peter, over to you again, and hopefully this time for good.
Thank you very much, Florence. So we were talking about whether or not an upper level ontology is useful. And I'll get into my full screen mode. So this is a tale of two clothes stores, the wardrobe versus the drawer. If we look at the drawer, it's very difficult to find out what's in it without digging around, pulling things out, and so on. We just take a look at what's on the surface. The wardrobe or the closet, on the other hand, everything is laid out in a much more orderly way. And it's done that way because I can see where everything is and I can put like with like. The technology that we have for this is very simple. It's the hanger. It's cheap, simple, easy to use. And so the question is, which is easier to use in a systematic way? Am I easier using the wardrobe with the hanger or the drawer? Well, I personally find that the drawer is rather challenging and that you've got to dig around, whereas the wardrobe is very straightforward. I can both find things and also if I want to put in any new clothes there, I know exactly where to put them in order to have them in an organized way. Now, in an analogous way, when we are working with data, we use an ontology in order to give meaning to the data, and that helps us to organize and to ensure that we've got like with like. But the difficulty is that most people start off developing their ontologies from scratch. And that means that when they have one ontology that describes one domain of data and another one describing another domain, they have challenges in kind of bringing them together. Their ontologies are being used a little bit like drawers rather than like hangers. Because after all, the ontology helps us to give meaning to data by things like membership of a class, class to subclass relationships, disjoint statements, domain and range constraints, and so on. But if we were to stop off at animal, for example, here, we wouldn't be able to know that the animal was a living thing and therefore be able to connect it with other living things, or to know that there were such things as non-living things. So we can see that going high up the ontology tree gives us a lot of benefit. So if we were to take a look at a typical example where we're wanting to connect together information, say, for example, with an HR department and an IT department, we can see that there are similar types of things, but actually they have got different labels within the two data sets. So we may extract the common meaning and connect it to some upper level class. And this then enables us to bring similar concepts together such that what we can do is link the two information sets using these upper level constructs. And these are acting very much like the hangers. They're enabling us to see what there is there, what's common, and to link things together. So the typical approach that we have when we're wanting to use something like the hanger is to take our existing ontologies and to hook them into an upper level ontology. And that enables us to read across from one information set to the other. The thing about this, though, is that it's not easy. There's a lot of work to retrofit this. You've got to be taking a very careful look at what the definitions are of your upper level ontology, you've got to be able to ensure that you've got appropriate kind of URI minting patterns, various other things like that, that help you link things together. Surely it's better to start off with an upper level ontology rather than to retrofit. The other thing that you have to think about, though, is that there is this thing called ontological commitment. In other words, you've got to be able to ensure that you agree with the whole of the ontology tree that you're connecting to and not just part of it. It means that you have to be able to live with all the assertions and inferences. And this is another reason why it's best not to retrofit, because retrofitting can sometimes lead to unexpected inferences, a little bit more difficult to check. So I'm suggesting that there are lots of benefits from actually starting off using an upper level ontology. Now, which one to use? Do I invent my own, or go I take a look at what's out there in the wild? There are a lot of upper level ontologies available to use. Some of them are upper and middle level ontologies like Sci, Sumo, perhaps schema.org. And then there are others which are only upper level ontologies. Some of them are a bit academic, philosophical underpinning, and they've got strange words in them like endurant and perdurant and things like that. It's not necessarily easy to work with. At the Italian government, and we've heard from Aldo earlier on today, they have an upper level ontology, which is very small, but it's nicely formed and really useful. I'd like to talk about GIST, which is the upper level ontology that we use at Semantic Arts. It's designed for enterprises in both the public and private sector, and it's also not too terse, but equally it's not got too many classes. It's something that most people can get their head around. Here we have a view looking at it through Protégé. You see that there are about 140 odd classes, about 100 object properties, 25 domain constraints, 46 range constraints. It's manageable. Anybody can take a look at this and get their head around it quite quickly. And yet there's enough material there for it to be flexible and applicable to most of the situations that we have in modeling information within enterprises. Here's a selection of the top classes with some of the definitions. And you can see that there are many things that you could link information in your domain to. So the point that I want to make in this very brief presentation is that an upper level ontology really is useful. You're standing on the shoulders of giants. Much of the heavy lifting of that upper level has already been done. The other thing about it is that you have the opportunity of bringing this into your design tool, like Protégé, as a starter, and then hooking everything into that. It's much better to do things that way in terms of your ontology development than to begin to think way after the fact when you've got 2 or 3 ontologies and you can't connect between them, that you have to reverse engineer some upper level constructs. So as a practice recommendation, what I would say is start your ontology development by extending from an upper level ontology. I'm suggesting to you GIST because it's very functional, it's very practical, and you'll be able to get a lot of mileage out of it very quickly. But basically, just pick one and go with it. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Peter. Can I have a very quick answer to one of the questions that we got? I'm afraid we don't have time for all of them, but somebody's asking, many ontologies start in some kind of an academic, big enterprise or institutional environment. What would be the hook or the hooks to bring in smaller players like SMEs?
So I think the first thing is that we shouldn't necessarily be moving, first of all, to create ontologies. We should be looking very carefully to see what's already available and what we can reuse, because that is the thing that enables us to have very wide interoperability. Far better to start off with what is there. And that's really what I would say. If you are going to go and develop an ontology, you need to make sure that you're in it for the long run so that you provide plenty of support and that you can respond to the needs for change. So I would caution against an over-proliferation of ontologies.
Thank you.
That's necessarily the answer that you wanted, but I think it's far better to reuse what's already there.
No reinventing the wheel. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Point taken. Before we move on, and thanks very much, Peter, and I'm glad you could join us and deliver your presentation. Before we move on to the first workshop of this afternoon, I just would like to remind all of you out there listening to us that we have a Slido survey that is open all afternoon at #ENDORSE 2021, and that we would really, really welcome your answers, your contributions to the questions that are in that survey. And also, we welcome your questions in the chat function of the platform, of the WebEx platform, during the sessions. I know that we haven't been able to always ask questions to our speakers, but we're going to continue, and hopefully we will have time in the upcoming session. So please feel free to send us your questions. Now, we continue with our track on innovation for the first, with the first workshop of the day. And for that, I will hand over to our three speakers. I'm very happy to welcome Armando Stellato, Manuel Fiorelli, and Andrea Turbati. All three of them are from the University of Rome Tor Vergata. And gentlemen, you will be handling the next hour with our audience. So please, the floor is yours. Are you there?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And we will have an intense hour because there is a lot to show. And so I will go immediately with sharing the presentation. Just one moment. It's coming. Are you getting it?
We have it. No problem.
Okay. So today we talk about lifecycling knowledge graphs with VocBench. VocBench is a platform, we will see later, for collaborative editing of ontologies, thesauri, and lexicons. It's funded by the ISA2 program, that is the same program that funded the LEOS tool that you watched in the previous presentation, in two presentations ago, sorry, Peter. And today we will talk specifically about how to elicit data from semi-structured knowledge that is not expressed, or structured knowledge that is not expressed according to the standards, to the web standards for knowledge representation that VocBench naturally manages. And then how to curate this information after this by showing some of the characteristic features of VocBench for knowledge management. First, just a premise. These slides will not be entirely showing during this introduction to VocBench, but it will be made available to all of you because I think that they represent useful learning material that we that can give you more insights about the platform. So we will only show a part of the slides that will be available for download. So the outline of the presentation is first a few words about the development team. Then faster than light VocBench history is just one slide. just a few mentions about the architecture and the requirements that lead to the development of the platform, and then the features of VocBench. This will last for 20 minutes. Florence, do I get that we started like it was in time?
You started on time, absolutely, yes. So you can continue to set time.
So we'll have 15 more minutes of presentation, and then we move to some demos, live demos of the tool that will be given by Manuele Fiorelli and Andrea Turbati, my colleagues. So this is our research lab. We work at the University of Roma Tor Vergata, that is in the surroundings of Rome, just on the lower east side of the Great Ring. It's a campus, it's a distributed campus, and we come from the engineering faculty. Our group, our research group is the ART group. ART stands for Artificial Research, Artificial Intelligence Research at Tor Vergata. This is just the core of the developers of the platform. There are then other collaborators, but these four guys here are those that were from the initial development of VocBench 3, or now I could say 5 years ago. The community is very wide. There are roughly 250 subscribed users to the mailing list of VocBench, and then there are obviously more that are just downloading the tool and using it. There are many organizations, so this is by far not a complete representation. These are just stakeholders that participated since the start to the first meeting in which the requirements for VocBench were laid down. So VocBench, we could say that is really, the requirements are really user community driven, because they've been provided by all the users that were already familiar with past versions of VocBench and that wanted to contribute to the creation of this new platform since its introduction to the ISA Square. So a very quick resume about the history of VocBench. It started as a project by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations within a project of the 6th European Framework, the NEON project. It was an EP project, an integrated project. And in that project, they were developing ontologies, a tool for developing networked ontologies. Within the project, FIO had their own requirements because they didn't want to develop just ontologies. They wanted also to develop thesauri, vocabulary. So in particular, they had an exigency of a large distributed developing community around their agrovoc vocabulary. That is a notable vocabulary about agriculture. So within the NEON project, they created a sort of neon light that was so initially called within the project, that is not the original system that was developed, but a specific brief for developing thesauri in a collaborative way, with particular attention to multilingualism. Later on, the system actually was very much tailored. The name VocBench came later. It was very much tailored around the agrovoc vocabulary. So later on, with the interest growing from other groups within FIO and other institutions, they decided to create something that was more general purpose for developing thesauri according to the standard that was emerging in those years, that was ISKOS, that stands for Simple Knowledge Organization Systems. And it's a vocabulary specifically for thesauri and knowledge organization systems in general. So together with me and my development team at the university, and I was at the time working with FIO as a consultant, we started this sort of Frankenstein project where we put in 6 months together an architecture that we had that was already compliant with the web standards for knowledge representation, with the collaborative support and the user interface of the VocBench systems. That was the start of VocBench 2. But like I said, it was a sort of Frankenstein. We made it in 6 months, in which we literally crashed the two tools together. We made them one. So the more you eat, the more you are hungry. Later on, there was interest by other organizations, and European Commission was one of them. And they wanted to maintain Eurovoc and other thesauri that were maintained within the publication office. So that's the story. There has been a funding for developing a new platform, redone almost from scratch, that is called VocBench 3. Much of the spirit of the original platform has been maintained, but it's also true that there have been a lot more features that have been added to the platform for providing a fully fledged platform for collaborative development, not only of the Zaurai anymore and knowledge organization systems, but also of ontologies and lexicons, exploiting a new standards that emerged in these last years that is called Ontolex. So a few words about the development of VocBench 3. To make the presentation short, I would just skip the requirements. I mean, there are several requirements that have been laid down, but I will go directly to show you how these have been implemented in the various features of the project. So a few words about the technological stack of VocBench. The first layer is the presentation, the one that you see as a user, and it's provided by being developed according to the by using the Angular framework developed by Google. Actually, we have been using the latest version, and recently we updated to the latest version of Angular. Semantic Karray, that was the system that we originally developed in Tor Vergata, and it's still the backbone of VocBench. Actually, we could say that now VocBench is merely a user interface, a web application over the service-oriented architecture called Semantic Karray. Semantic Karray so includes not only now the management of the data, but also the aspects like user management, data validation, etc., that previously were managed by the original VocBench platform developed by FAO. Then we have optimizations for specific triple stores. VocBench is able to connect to different triple stores, and in general, we try to use a kind of agnostic architectures. But in some cases, it's useful to exploit some of the specific characteristics that these triple stores might offer. So we maintain a very general purpose interface for connecting to triple stores, but at the same time, we might exploit some of their features, like, for example, optimizations for the search capabilities, exploiting the kind of indexes and the specific Sparkle functions provided by them, depending on the triple store being connected. So then we have, we are exploiting RDF4J, which is a notorious notable middleware for connecting to RDF data. And finally, there is the vendor triple store that is connected to the system. Let me say also that VocBench provides also native, based on RDF4J, some native triple store within it. So it depends on the size of the project that you're maintaining. If you are in production or you're just playing with the tool, you can use the tool directly with the triple store that is within it, or you can connect to an external one. Just a few words about the architecture. The architecture is a typical three-tier architecture, but then it is possible also to provide extensions of it. And so you see here the three tiers of the architecture, and on the right, you see the various extensions that can be provided for each tier. VocBench is mainly available as a standalone web application and as a Docker distributions. The instruction for the installations, which is very easy, are available here. When I say very easy, it is important to remark that I say this is a collaborative tool, but don't think about some complex web application which needs to be installed, configured, etc. You can download VocBench. The only requirement is to have Java installed in your machine, and then you can just run VocBench with a click of the mouse over a single start batch file. Then there is there are other possibilities in that you can configure the system for connecting to for more complex environments and by exploiting the collaborative features of the tool. So, a few words about the features. But first, the user interface, like I mentioned, is based on Angular. We have no, let's say, there are some tools that are compliant with the RDF standard, but they are focused on some specific kind of modeling, and they have some sort of, let's say, first-class citizens, things that you can edit, and maybe other things that you can just connect, but you cannot do more than certain editing. Now, in VocBench, actually, there are no first-class citizens, or better, every single resource in RDF can be modeled, and there are specific patterns in the modeling environment that can be applied in the user interface, depending on the kind of resource that you have. So we have patterns that are specific to OWL, SCOS, and Ontologies that are the main core modeling vocabularies of the RDF family. But then, even if you model your own ontology and you have your own classes and your kind of features, or your own kind of resources, sorry, you can model them without any problem. The user interface is multilingual, both in the editing and in the aspects. So you have here multilingual editing of labels, and then this can be used also to provide the rendering of the resources. For example, in this case, English and Italian have been chosen. And then there is the possibility also to express some preferences about the language, like I say, the languages that you want to use for the presentation, the language that you want to filter, maybe when you see all the details of a certain resource, etc. And then the user interface itself is multilingual. Here there is a selector with the new version of VocBench that will be released on at the end of this week, probably, the version 9.0. It will be possible to select the a language of choice. As a first, I mean, while implementing the support for internationalization, we also provided a translation for Italian because we are all Italians. But obviously, once the version will be released, we foresee many translations for all languages, at least all those of the member states of the European Union, but we have already connections with China, with Malaysia and other countries that are eager to provide translations for VocBench. Custom forms are another particularity of the platform. They allow to model specific user interfaces that you want to create for your own classes. So if you have your own ontology, and when you create something, you want to provide a specific form that needs to be prompted to the user, and or with some information, maybe some mandatory information that needs to be filled before the resource can be created, then you can do that in VocBench. This is an example that has been adapted for the Ontological standard, in which we created some custom forms for specific patterns in the development of lexical entries in a lexicon. In this case, instead of just merely creating a resource and then one by one, like with any ontology editor, adding the properties that might fit your scheme, in this case, you're already prompted with a form. Notice that these are just not a listing of properties. In this case, there may be also complex patterns behind these things. For example, the information that you find here, references, subject of probe, subject marker, etc., are not just direct properties. In some cases, may be complex constructs that will be written after the user selects the information to be prompted. Role-based access control. This is another feature typical of collaborative environment. The important thing here is that we are not just providing role-based access control. That is, you declare yourself as a kind of user. Obviously, your authorization is checked, and then every action that is you can perform is measured by first with the compliance to the kind of user that you are. For example, if you are only a lexicographer, you can only edit the lexical parts of a thesaurus, of an ontology. But in our case, our system is much more fine-grained. It is indeed not a role-based access control. It is capability-based access control. That is, every single action in VocBench is specified by a capability. You need to own that capability in order to be authorized to perform that action. It is important to notice that we have roles because the roles are actually collections, predefined collections of capabilities. So you can go along with the roles that are here, but you can also specify new capabilities or create new roles by putting together existing capabilities. And also for simplifying things, you can even just assign two roles. That means making the union of the capabilities of the roles and assign them to a certain user. So extensibility of VocBench. There are mainly three ways to extend VocBench. One is the sale extensions. That is, these are extensions that can be deployed directly into the Triple Store. So technically, they are not extensions in VocBench, but they are extensions that VocBench is able to connect, to talk to, let's say. these are extensions that require to be very close to the place where the data is being originated. And this is exactly for performance reason. If everything is exactly in the place where the triple store is within the triple store, that works much better, as you can imagine. Service extensions, you can add new functionality to the system, and this can be invoked. And extension points, there are some well-known functionalities within the system, so they are already foreseen, but you may change their implementation. For example, there is the concept of a collaboration system within VocBench, the possibility to connect to an external collaboration system. When we originally developed the feature, there was a connector to Jira. But, for example, recently, without changing the original functionality, we created an extension for connecting to FreeCamp, which is another collaboration system. And if you have another collaboration system that you want to connect to, this is an open source project. And in any case, this is an extension. So you don't need to change the original system. You can develop your own extensions for your collaboration system of interest and connect to the system. So, okay, I just talk. This is an example of the sale extensions. One that is powering the validation of the validation mechanism within VocBench. As you can see here, there is a concept that is contract staff, and there are some translations for it in various languages. In this case, there is a word, contrattisti, that has been added in Italian, and another label that is personale non statutario that was available first in the thesaurus, but somebody decided that it was not appropriate to use this label for translating contract staff. So in this case, one label has been reported as removed, and one label has been reported as added. The addition is in grid italic, and the removal is in red strike through. This information is still not removed. It's just asked to be added or to be removed. But then what happens? That there is a validation interface in which some specific kind of users, that is validators, can inspect the actions that have been performed and can decide if the action is proper, and so they can validate and accept it, or they can reject it. It is also possible to check the parameters of the request that has been performed and to check the details that have been changed by, or that will be changed by the modification. There is also a blacklist that allows to tell to a user that, for example, a certain term that has been added by them shouldn't be added because it was available. It was previously added already by somebody and it was rejected. So if the blacklist feature is activated, all the terms that are rejected will be stored in this blacklist and will be used to inform new users or users that simply didn't know about this, that a term that they are suggesting maybe has already been proposed and has been rejected. So they can decide if it's the case to add it in any case, because it's also available, the rationale for rejection. So they can inspect it and decide if, in this case, the term is properly added, or if they should follow the original advice and not add it anymore. I stop here with the description of VocBench because I think it's better that you see it on a live environment. So I give the floor to Andrea for giving a demo about the possibilities of VocBench to load data from a spreadsheet. In particular, here we will use some Excel files and transform them into RDF data within VocBench. Okay, Andrea, you can go.
Okay, I think you need to stop sharing your screen. Do you hear me, first of all?
Yes, doing.
Okay. Okay. Now I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to transform and import data from a spreadsheet. First of all, the first thing a user needs to do in this case is to create a new project. So here we have the list of existing projects. I can create a new project. Let's call it OP Treatise. I need to specify the base URI. The base URI will be used when creating new concepts, classes, and instances. In this case, the project I'm going to create is a SCOS project, so it's a thesaurus. And as lexicalization, I'm going to set SCOS XL. Since this is a small project, I can use the create local. Otherwise, I could use the create remote, so to connect VocBench to an external repository, for example, GraphDB. Once the project has been created, you just need to select the project. And if you go into the data tab, you will see that the tab is empty. So we can manually, in this case, create a new scheme. We specify the label and the URI for the new scheme. So this is the new scheme. And we can also import an existing ontology, since this ontology will be used when working with the spreadsheet. In particular, in this case, I'm going to import the DC-term ontology. So now I can start working with the spreadsheet. To do this task inside VocBench, there is a precise module called sheet2rdf, which is used to load spreadsheet and to transform the data to load it inside the current project. So first of all, I need to open the spreadsheet. As you can see here in this spreadsheet, we have several columns and several rows, where each row is used to describe a single concept. So the first thing to do when you want to transform a spreadsheet into RDF data is to select which column will be used to represent the subject of all the triples. So I press subject selection, then I need to specify which is the column that is going to represent the subject, in this case, authority code, the second one. I'm going also to say that the value in this cell will be used as, will be stated as a concept, so assert type concept. I will use the default converter. In this case, the default converter means that the value from the cell will be appended to the base URI specified from, by the project itself. I can also add other information. For example, in this case, I'm going to say that this concept will be top concept of the existing schema. So I will set collection scheme. I'm selecting the schema. Okay, so now I can immediately see what will be the template that will be executed for this specific spreadsheet. In this case, you can see that this is the template. The template is written in Perl, a language which was developed precisely for this task. So we have just one node, in this case, the subject, which is type URI, from column 1. Remember that the column count starts from 0, so column 1. Then I can also start working on other columns. For example, let's start working on treat classification. So this is the column treat classification. I click here, and I say that in this case, the value from this column will be used to state that the subject is top concept also of these schemes. So since it's a very simple triple, I can use the add simple graph application. I need to select which property will be used during the transformation. Also in this case, top concept of. Then the value from this cell, I will say that is a scheme. And I need to create a nodes representing this value. I will use the default converter as before. So now if I update the template, you will see that now we have two different nodes. And then also we have several new triples. In particular, the second one here, that the subject is top concept of scheme, where schemes is the nodes from column 4. I can also do something similar for the date. In this case, since also date is will be added as a simple triple, I add simple graph application. I can select a different property. Since I have imported the DC-term ontology, I can use the DC-term properties. In this case, DC-term created. I need to specify the type of the value. In this case, it's not a long string, it's a date. And by selecting the date, a different type, you will see that
as a node, for the converter, I have different type of converter. In this case, the first one is date converter, which is the one that I'm going to be used, because it's a converter which is used to produce a typed literal formatted according to this specific pattern. I need to create the node. Okay. Now, if I update the template, you will see that now I have a new node created, which is a literal with this specific converter from column 5. Okay. And also we have a new triple in the template. So now I'm going to load. Another important thing is that once you have prepared a configuration for this specific spreadsheet, you can save it, meaning that if you save it, then you can later load. In this case, I'm going to load a previously saved configuration to speed up the process. So now I have loaded. If I generate the triples, you will see that I have different nodes in this case, the subject, the ID from column 0, the created, and other two nodes from the end of the spreadsheet, with all the different new triples that will be generated. Now I can finally generate the triple. The triple generated are generated here. If you click on any of these triple, you will see immediately from the spreadsheet which row was used to generate this specific triple. So all these triple were generated only considering the information from the first row, while this other from the second row. Now I can decide to export the generated triple or to add the generated triple to the project. In this case, I'm going to add it to the project. Now I can go and see. If I refresh the scheme, you will see different schemes. And in the concept, if I refresh, you will see different concepts. And if I click on any of these concepts, you will see all the information generated from the spreadsheet. As you can see, at the moment, there is no lexicalization. In this case, to add the lexicalization, I need to load a different spreadsheet, the label spreadsheet. Here is a spreadsheet containing all the lexicalization. So I need to do something similar to state which is the subject. Then, for example, let's say that I want to add the Spanish lexicalization. Since we are working with SCOSXL, and SCOSXL does not need to add just a single triple, but a more complex structure, in this case, I'm going to select Add Advanced Graph Application. VocBench already provides the configuration for Xlabel, so I can load this configuration for Xlabel. As you can see here, this configuration will load two different nodes, literal form and Xlabel. Regarding the literal form, the default one is in English, so I need to change the language because I'm going to generate a Spanish label. All the other things, I can leave it as it is. Okay, so now the template, you will see that just by doing this, the subject is the same as before. And regarding the column 6, so the Spanish columns, you can see that two different nodes have been generated, the literal form and the Xlabel. And regarding the option, the graph part, so the triple that will be generated, there will be generated 3 different triples for each label. I can do something similar, so I can load a previously saved configuration, which deals with also other labels. So now you will see that we have 4 different labels, and in particular, we have the Spanish, the Danish, the German, and the English labels. I can then generate the triple. I can then add the triple to the ontology, to the thesaurus in this case. And if I refresh the concept tree, in this case, a flat list, you will see the different concepts. And by selecting each concept, you will see all the information as before. So the information about the top concept and the dates, which were added using the first spreadsheet, plus the information about the lexicalization. Since this is a SCOSXL lexicalization, the system automatically resolves the complexity of SCOSXL label by showing directly the label itself, the literal form. If I double click on any of these labels, I can then see all the information about the SCOS-XL label, in this case, just the literal form. And this was very quick show about the possibility to use spreadsheet. And the important thing about the use of sheet or RDF inside VocBench is that the user doesn't need to do anything, just need to select which property to use, or even he can decide to load a previously saved configuration to be used with a specific spreadsheet. Now I can leave the floor to Manuel, which can do the other demo. Stopping the, need to stop the sharing. Okay, Manuel, you can do.
Thank you, Andrea, for the introduction. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, now I will show you a quick tour on the capabilities for the maintenance of thesaurus within VocBench. The first step is to create a new project for the dataset that we want to maintain. Following our running example, I will edit the treaty thesaurus as published by the Publication Office of the European Union. For simplicity, I will preload the dataset upon project creation. To that end, I can load it from a local file, a remote URL, or from a dataset catalog. This is in fact an extension point of VocBench, as explained by Armando, for which we provide out-of-the-box implementation for the Linked Open Data Cloud, Linked Open Vocabularies, and the European Union Open Data Portal. Let me select this one and search for treaty. As you can see, the first result is the treaty named authority list. Let me select this dataset and press OK. Then I select the distribution following the SCOS-RP profile, and then in a few seconds, VocBench will download the dataset and determine important stuff about it, such as its base URI, model, which is SCOS, and lexicalization model, which is SCOS-XL, that is to say the extension of SCOS for reified labels. I could stop here and press create, but I want to enable a few optional features already introduced by Armando: history, validation, and blacklisting, so we can give a look to them on a real project. Furthermore, I decided to deploy this dataset on our triple store, utilizing, in particular, OntoText GraphDB, the free edition. Now VocBench is configuring the repositories on this triple store, uploading the data on it, and once finished, we will be able to access the dataset. As we will see, we will land on the concept tree, which shows the concepts defined by this thesaurus. Since this is a flat list of concepts, we will not see any hierarchy. So what we have is just a list of concepts. As you can see, each concept is rendered by combining its preferred labels in all available languages. Since there are a few languages and I don't know much of them, I changed my preferences for this project and only enabled to show English and Italian labels. Coming back to the data view, let me reload the tree, and now we can see that the concepts are shown by their English and Italian label. Let me click on some concept and open its resource view. This is a handy representation of the triples about this resource, which can be found in this dataset. The triples are subdivided into sections, each corresponding roughly to some property. In particular, we have for a concept their types, where you can see Scott's concept, obviously. The list of schemes, this concept is a top concept, that is to say a root. The list of schemes it belongs to in general, and the broader concepts, where we can find any for the reasons I explained before. Lexicalizations is rather different because it combines, it abstracts over a number of different properties for expressing lexicalizations. In particular, for Scots Excel, we might have preferred label as in this example, but also alternative ones and hidden ones. Finally, notes is a section grouping all type of properties for expressing notes, which are sub-properties of Scots note. In particular, we have change note, definition, and so on. As you can see, this concept has a definition in English. Finally, there is other properties that contains all property values not categorized otherwise. An interesting information is that the sections shown in the resource view depends on the type of resources. For example, for a class, we would have class axioms such as subclasses and so on. Before starting editing this thesaurus, let me show the possibility to dump its status as a named version, in this case V1. This is handy because once we saved a version, we may come back to it later in a read-only fashion, even if we have edited the dataset meanwhile. Coming back to the data view for this concept, I can add a definition for it by pressing this plus button. Then select literal and choosing the language, in my case, Italian. Then I can write the Italian definition for this concept. However, I won't press OK because I want to show you a different view. That is to say, the terminologist view. This is an alternative representation tailored to the needs of terminologists who may not aware of the details or don't want to know the details of the RDF and Scots representation of this thesauri, but instead focus on the information they are interested on, that is to say, terms and definition. An important thing is that the languages are first classes citizens which are used to index the content of this panel. For example, if I click on this flag, I am moved to the definition and term in English. Please note that in the resource view, we have different approach. These two bits of information, though related by the fact that they are expressed in the same language, are instead scattered into perhaps distant sections, lexicalizations and definition. If instead one wants to focus on terms and definition in some languages, this view is particularly more easier. Furthermore, if we want to edit the concept and add the definition, as you can see, this view utilizes an inline editing approach in which we have no prompt, no OK button to press, but just a text field which we can edit remaining in the same panel and then press enter when we are satisfied. As you can see, the label, the definition, sorry, is shown in green italic, both here and in the resource view, because this change has not been committed yet, but staged for validation, so that a user with suitable capabilities can inspect the operation, both the name, the parameters, and if desired, the actual triple modification, and as in this case, accept or otherwise reject the change. Let me go back to the data view. Another thing that we can do is to actively select the current scheme, and then delete a concept. Again, as you can see, this concept is marked in red to signify that it is suggested for removal. Again, actual deletion is only performed when the deletion is accepted by a validator. Now, let me again refresh. Now, let me show what happens when someone suggests the creation of a new concept, in this case, joke. Clearly, we don't want such a concept in our dataset, so we reject it and write as a message, we don't like jokes. If we reload this view, we can see that the concept is no longer here because rejected changes completely disappear from the dataset. Now, let me try to insist and suggest the same concept again. As you can see, the system warns me that this is a blacklisted term, so I can avoid to continuously propose the same term again. Let me show that the two operations accepted are in the history of this dataset, but the rejecting one, no. Now, let me go back to the versioning tab and create a further tag v2 for the current state of the dataset. Now that we have two versions of the dataset, we might be interested in knowing the exact difference between them. To that end, we can use the scosdiffing tool, which allows us to compare two datasets. This task is carried on asynchronously, as it can take a lot of time, in this case just 1 minute, but we'll spend this time to show something else. In particular, I want to show you that we can switch even within a single dataset to a different version. In this case, we open the description of the concept we have just modified, and switching back to V1, we no longer see the other definition. If we switch back to the current version, we now see the added definition. We can also switch to a different version globally, so that also trees show a read-only dataset, show that version in a read-only manner. Another important thing is the search capabilities. As one expects, we can search for some text, and the system will automatically select the result if one or show some search dialog, as in this case, because there are multiple results. We can change different matching modes or specify even more complex parameters, for example, whether to search on local names or nodes. In addition to text search, we also have Sparkle and the so-called parameterized query. I have just created one before, which I will load now. A parameterization combines a Sparkle query containing 3 variables, in this case the variable v, with a form specifying how that variables can be bound. For example, in this case, we say that v has to be bound to a Boolean value and be rendered as deprecation status. The idea is that someone more proficient with Sparkle will create all of this, while a less proficient user may simply run this query, specifying whether he wants deprecated concept or not. Let me click on a result, and you will see that this concept is effectively deprecated. True, because it has been replaced by another act. Such parameterized query, returning just one result, can also be used to implement the so-called custom search, in which we have a dialog containing the fields I have shown before, so that we can say we want to deprecate the concept and then press OK. As you can see, now concepts are no longer shown through their ID, but through their rendering consisting of the labels. Here, concepts are rendered, while here are not rendered. Another search capability is the so-called advanced search, which provides us a wizard-based interface for the construction of a complex Sparkle queries, combining full text search and other type of patterns. To conclude in a few seconds, let's go back to the Scott Stripping tab. As you can see, the comparison has been completed in 1 minute. Now I can download the report in one of the supported formats, including PDF. Let me download the report. Which provide us a resuming of the changes in terms of removed resources. Here is the concept I have deleted. Changed added resources, no one here, and changed resources. The concept I have added a definition to. Similar categories exist for refined labels in case of SCOS Excel projects. Please note that this report is object-oriented, while the history tab of VocBench is more oriented towards the actions, the state changes performed on the tab, on the dataset. I have concluded my presentation. I think that we are open for the question-answer session, if I am right.
Yes,
Sorry if I take a few seconds more.
Perfect. So we can collect some questions from the audience, and we are available for any, doubt or curiosity that you might have. Yes, there is Susan Hussain that is asking if she's interested in the versioning functionality of VocBench, and she's asking if there is detailed documentation online somewhere. Yes, actually, all of the documentation of VocBench is available through the VocBench website. I'm typing the website to everybody, so you find it in the chat. It's also in the presentation, in any case. Yes. Okay, so on this site you will find the documentation. The documentation is separated for 3 kind of figures.
Armando, I have stopped my sharing, so you can even share your browser if you like.
Ah, it's okay, thank you. Anyway, I just linked in the meanwhile the presentation, sorry, the site. Okay, this is, I was just on VocBench, sorry. I was loading the GIST ontology that Peter showed before. So you can watch also on VocBench. Like I said, it's not only for Thesaurai, that was the original purpose of VocBench, but now it's able to also show ontologies and edit them. Also with convenient interfaces. You see also, this is the Manchester syntax for those who are familiar with ontology, for conveniently editing in natural language logical axioms for ontology. So let's go to the site of VocBench. And like I said, there is a convenient documentation that is very complete. There are mainly 3 figures that are separated for the manuals. One is for users, system administrators. System administrators in this sense is not the administrator on VocBench that is also a special kind of user, but really the person that is behind the scenes working on the installation in the machines, etc. So this is more technical information for system administrators, and then information for developers that might want to develop extensions for VocBench. So for instance, the question was about versioning, and I get that there should be an editor here. Custom services, alignment validation, collaboration systems. Cost diffing, for example, the tool that has been shown before, shows how to configure the tool, and these are the results, for example, shown in HTML. So all this information can be found on the site. And then you can find also the information about the other versioning feature that.
Armando.
Yes.
It seems to me that there is a link to versioning in the scopes diffing page.
Yes, here it is. And this is okay. It was on the global data management, and then there is the okay. And so I mean. Anything is available on the mailing list, on the site. But if there is any doubt or something is not clear, or maybe you have a bug to report because something is not working properly, or as you expect, maybe it's a supposed bug, but you are not sure and you want to know, there is a support mailing list that comes for free. It's a community-driven mailing list. There is always us, the developer, that will reply, but there is also a vibrant community. Like I said, around 250 users that are very often very happy to provide replies to responses to any question. The mailing list is mainly the user discussion group. So you just click on the VocBench site, support, and here user discussion group. And then here you can subscribe. It's a Google group. It's a Google discussion group. And so if you have any questions, you might go here, and you are very welcome to post any questions that you might have. And we always reply in a very short time. If it's not us, it will be somebody else from the list. So other questions?
Like we have no further question coming. I'm sure there will be some afterthoughts and people will get back to you in a little while once they have digested all this information or tried things out themselves, and then probably more questions will come. But thank you very much.
I see that there are some. If you
there are some. Okay.
We have still 3 minutes, so very shortly to go the other. To Susan, she didn't find the specific information about the other versioning feature. Okay, I will look into it. Maybe we are missing a link, so in case we will fix it. Thank you for reporting. So I go back. What are the features by Mihai Paunescu? What are the feature developments you have in mind for VocBench? Well, there are several, let's say, but one important feature is about, one important characteristic is about improving, again, the customization of the user interface. Like we say, VocBench is not only a thesaurus editor. It allows for editing of ontologies, of lexicons, but I also missed one important part. It's also a very convenient data editor. This is something that is not to be taken for granted for all editors, because it is possible to create this user interface for conveniently editing information. Normally, what happens is that these general purpose editors are obviously not domain specific. When one wants to develop a domain specific application, they have to develop it. But we are trying to make VocBench something that can be conveniently used for editing any kind of construct by defining specific custom interfaces. So this is one of the various features, then I should go back to the list. I'm not good with memory, but there are more things coming. Vladimir Alexiev, hi Vladimir. Hi Armando, you plan to use RDF star in any way? It's not a short-term plan, but obviously it's something interesting that absolutely needs to be taken into account. Just to report, when we define a roadmap for VocBench, usually we are working like 1-2 years in advance to have a clear understanding of what lies in the future. But obviously, if there is something important that pops out, such as the support for RDF star, we must react. So absolutely yes. Probably not this year. We will see for next year, depending on the priority of the features that have to be introduced. Then going back to previous questions, do you track the rejected terms as entry terms? Can you distinguish if they are misspellings or non-preferred synonyms? This is merely a matter of representation. As you know, the SCOS standard provides one property that is called hidden label, that is exactly for kind of misspells. In terms of rejection terms, we generally report the rejection for any term that is added in any way, for directly creating a new concept or for adding a label to a concept. Then, like I said, there is a rationale for that is reported by the original validator, and the new user can decide if it applies to his case or not. I have to close because I think that we're running out of time, so I want to be sharp on that. And thanks, because I see that there are other questions. Please feel free to mail us or to join the mailing list, even better, because we will be happy to reply to all of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sticking to your time, and thank you very much for sharing all this information, all this knowledge with us. And I'm sure indeed you have not only generated a lot of interest, but also you will certainly get quite a lot of feedback and indeed additions to your mailing list after this presentation. So thank you, all three of you. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry?
Thank you for the occasion to present it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're now taking a 5-minute break. So very little bit of time to refresh yourself, pour yourself a cup of tea or coffee or water, and take a minute or two to stretch your legs. I see you back here at 4:16. It's 4:12 on my computer. So let's say 4 minutes and a half. At 4:16, please be back online. Thank you very much. See you in a few minutes. Already kick off with our second workshop of the afternoon. And for that, I would like to invite the speaker who's going to lead us through this new exercise. And I'm happy to welcome Agata Majstrowska. Agata is a data science strategist from Wroclaw. Agata, good afternoon. And
good afternoon.
Welcome. Agata will look at AI and business decisions, a very important topic for many of us in our daily working life. So, Agata, over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really nice to see you and to have you here and to have an opportunity to share our experiences on the particular field of operating. I will focus on the business decision making with AI. Just because I would like to share how many issues we've discovered with the communications on the very first stages of planning the projects or the deployment or development of a software we've been trying to deal with. The scope was inspired in a way by Ajo Moikot, who is the CEO of Amble, a data rights management company. And he says in 2015 on the pages of Forbes, the combination of big data and AI could dramatically transform businesses and industry by blurring the line between quantitative and qualitative. What does it mean and why? I would like to share in a way some part of general remarks and remarks on the actual project we've been dealing with, because we just raised our knowledge and our expectation not to just to collect the data or to work with the data by quantity, but we would like our applications and our systems to be very high quality, or just the quality we could achieve, the best one we could have, because it's not a deal just to have the application which works, but we would like it to cover maybe not all the situations, but most of them for sure, and with a very good quality, because that's the sense of running in a business. So when we are trying to focus on main points of a process we are going to undertake, we should, from my personal experience, consider data modeling approach versus process-based management, which was popular in the previous part of developing or deploying the software and the systems, which are really dealing with data itself. Well, it's really easy to say that we've got some part of reality which is really described, and we would like to transfer that into any digital word and a digital part of operating, or any part of automated or half automated processes. But we've got a plenty of situation when we have a group of data, which is in a way very it's very big set, but it's really unorganized, and we trying to build some new procedures dealing with the data we have. I mean, we would like to have some kind of effectiveness in our projects, and just not having any process which is existing, but we have to figure it out how to build the process on a basis on the data that we already have, or we can gain very easily. So when we are trying in the first way, or in the first steps, when we are trying to start with any project, we are thinking about the methodology, and we are all asking fundamental questions of scenario thinking. I mean, what, why, and how, and it's really obvious. But when we are doing some kind of specific case study, those questions have a lot of additional answers, making very clear what we can gain, or what we would gain if we just try to think about it a little bit longer, and just in the longer perspective of having something that we already doing now. I mean, we can arrange any process on a case study with putting some point in the future and trying to figure it out how to build something which is not fair enough for today, but will be good enough for tomorrow. So when we are trying to, when we are trying to set some goals, we are saying, okay, it's not just for today. I know that, especially on pandemic, we have a very short-term plans and very short-term goals, just because we are not sure what is going to happen next month. But we can really predict what parts of the things that we are doing today will be really in working on working table for tomorrow, for the next week, and how we can construct the project, how we can build it, just to say, okay, we can really, concerning our goals and sub goals, divide our project into the specific stages. But we know that in 3 years or 5 years, it's still going to be the complete version, which is compatible with every particular element inside. When we are looking at the main factors of any project, and according to the particular case study, we just need to in a way lost the way of thinking that we need something here and now. What can we do to make it better, to make it reusable for the next day? That's how we should, and we could, and we can, of course, build and how can we model the decision, and how can we make the modeling decisions of our projects. When we are talking about a case study, and we are trying to focus on data or process approach, and we are trying to build a conceptual reference model, in a specific case studies I would like to present and to share our experiences. We've gone through the project, which was named the Adequate Healthcare Unit, which was an academic one. And we've got a goal to deploy the client server application, allowing an effective way of searching the most adequate healthcare unit for the COVID-19 patient. And the main requirements and limitations we've met, it was that we would like to have a quality of services to be arranged in acceptable level, and we need to have some user experience suggestions, because that part of reality? Partly. I mean, in a way of a few elements we've already have in the reality. What we've defined as the limitations was unclear on non-existing procedures concerning the pandemic facts and pandemic situation, and the third party's data input, which was quite unpredictable and quite messy. Of course, we've met quite low quality API level. Why? Because the system is quite not so modern, I would say, diplomatically, and it was not built to be reused in next steps in the future. It was just built just for purpose, just for external public reasons. And it was not really planned for be used for anything else. The second project which we experienced, and I would like to share with you, it was the unfair clauses in the written agreements generally, and it was a commercial one where the goal was the deployment of the client service application, allowing the simple and contextual comparison of written text with the legal authority database-based content. And what we met here, the requirements and limitations were as follows. We wanted to have a high level of accuracy because it was characteristic and specific for that particular output data. And what we've met was the plenty of scanned documents. I mean, even the photos from the mobiles and old-fashioned database, which is on the public side. And we needed to just order the data to just make a absolutely new database, not just sharing the databases we've already had. We need to build a new one just to have a chance to get a step further with the application. Well, on the first look, when we were talking about data and processes, we just discovered that data is very messy. The processes are not so so complete. So we found that when we going to order the data, we can rebuild the processes, or we can offer the new processes of the application, which are not really stated in the reality, and it really worked in a way. Of course, when we are talking about any project, we are talking about design structure matrix, which can be, of course, activity-based graph or matrix, dividing into tasks, group of tasks, or relations. But what we discovered in those two projects was that it's not really easy to say what the task is, because the task is really related to the data, and we've got very large amount of users who can deliver the data as a third party, and we cannot really predict what tools they are going to use, what standard they are going to use, and of course what errors or whatever disturbance models in a sentences even are going to be discovered when we start to work on the database. Of course, in any project, we use Moscow prioritization, and we usually decide what we must have, what we should have, what we could have, and what we won't have. And we, as a team, posed the question, should we really concern what we won't have for sure, or can we concern what we would have if we take if we spend a little bit more time on conceptual models and in a way standardized the output data to be reused in the future. And we put it there in a particular context. I mean, we put it on the first position, the goal and the sub goals, which are addressed to the project. Of course, the cost, time, and the quality. and it was not so easy to build the expectations because we've got some limitations. When we are talking about the classical software engineering, we are dividing any application on any system on functional and non-functional requirements. But what we've noticed in both those projects, that the central limit theorem, which is quite mathematical one, is really working. I mean, let me put it on screen as an additional chart. We've noticed, just a second. Let me use a pen. We've noticed that when we are talking about some kind of samples, it doesn't matter how many samples do we have. The chart is always going by Gauss. I mean, we've got some mean, which is predictable, what is going to happen in our system, and we can build some kind of a standards like here, and we will gain some accuracy, but those exceptions needs a lot of work to do to be implemented inside. But we've noticed that whatever we do, we can improve the number of cases. We can just trying to enlarge and to change the metrics here from 30 cases to 30,000 cases, but still the predictable model goes with a Gauss line and nothing else. So what we've met additionally, especially here in those exceptions, all the legal requirements and the lack of regulations, of course, the level of quality of services, we found some inaccuracy, human errors, and other factors which were dependent on the project itself. It sometimes was just simple hardware or the lack of networking, lack of connectivity, a simple mistake which can interfere the proper working of the application. So usually when we are doing an assignment, we consider work packages, activity, hours, quality, and costs. But when you are trying to put it into a specific angle, I mean, when you are trying to put some glasses named gold, requirements and limitations, that makes you feel that the conceptual model is going to be very important just on the beginning of a project. You need to just say what is going to happen. Our previous experiences led us to say, okay, on the very beginning, we need to communicate the decision makers what's the relation between their goals and their expectation and the time and cost of implementing the project. But we also noticed that when we are going to say, okay, that what you are going to gain as an output today, you may reuse in the future, but you must to have additional time to combine to work on conceptual model. Those dilemmas was in a way clear for the business, and when they were conscious about the framework of the decision, I mean where the border is, what's the importance, they were actually in a way surprised why they didn't notice that before. I hope you, as you've got some previous experiences and dilemmas which you've noticed. I don't know if our experiences and our point of view is fair enough and it's really actual, but we've got some bench of experiences that leads us to say there is a lot of people who are not really conscious about the link between software architecture and software possibilities and the real goals of business. I mean, when we are trying to link it and we are trying to say, okay, it's not just a quantity, it's better to have a little higher quality of services, of data, or of databases, it will be profitable in the future. I don't know if you are ready for now to post your previous experiences or your dilemmas. I've planned the brainstorming session 1 for now, and the second in the second part, when I would like to, in a way, underline our points of view that we are trying to present here and share our experiences. But if you are ready for share your ideas or your question now, please do so. If not, I will try to do it in a second brainstorm session, which is planned on that slides. Are you ready for post any questions, or share your remarks, share your feedbacks for now? If not, I will follow to the next slides. Do we have any comments, Florence?
I don't see any on the chat, but to all our participants, remember that this is a workshop, therefore it's meant to be interactive so that everybody gains the maximum output out of it. So don't hesitate if you have questions, remarks, anything, any comment, or indeed, as I guess I was asking, sharing experience. So if you don't have any now, feel free to load them onto the chat, share them onto the chat while Agatha continues, and then hopefully go back to them at the end.
Okay, there's a second brainstorming session planned on the slides. So I in a way predicted that the audience will not be ready for the questions and comments for now. So let me go to the next slide. Well, when we are going one step further, I mean deeper in the technology. I'm not the kind of a person who's classically in a coding team, but I'm trying to build a bridge between the coding team and that is I mean the business one. Who is not really understand the data structures and the importance of that. But when we are going that particular level up, we can see that when we do data analysis and we are working on conceptual reference models, the first thing is that we cannot avoid really. We cannot is cleaning the data we already have. It's not really. Maybe it's obvious for part of you, and maybe it's something new for the rest. But really, the cleaning process is very long, and it's really kind of tricky to figure it out how to regroup the data, how to build a totally new database to make it usable for your processes your application is going to achieve. It's about organizing and normalizing the data. We're trying to build some patterns and even let me draw again the Gaussian line. Even if we had that mean particular in every project, believe me, it's 100% statistic. Even if we have that pattern, which is really easy to gain, and we've got very high accuracy there. When we try to build a pattern from here, and it's quite tough to build it, but it's still really predictable what is going to happen. Those particular exceptions, which are lined here, they need a lot of work. They need a lot of analyzing, but not using algorithms. You need to do it manually in a way. I mean, you need to read all the cases and try to figure it out if they are really capable to build some kind of micro groups which are somewhere here, because in a way of statistics, there are a few examples or a few samples which are really in the particular microsets, which are really capable to be described as another pattern, micro pattern, but still existing. That's how we can really improve the accuracy of the whole system, but we need to be aware of it, that it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of money actually. But if it really aligns with our goal, that we would like to have some kind of a system which is really complex, it's worth working about that particular parts of coding over those micro sets, which are really, in a way, sometimes you say a lucky guess how to combine the totally new subgroup of similar situation with which can be categorized as an object to be transferred into a field of operating of our software. That's why we are trying to get a wider context, a bigger picture. Cooperation and the communication is really important with a whole team and a whole bench of shareholders or stakeholders who are really interested in having particular goal or sub goals are achieved. That's why we've figured out that Moscow is just one way of prioritization. But a second point is to decide if we are able or capable to set the data approach or process approach. Then whatever it is, we need to know what data we already have, how can we order it, and what data we can gain during the new application process ongoing. I mean, when it started to be usable for users, and how we can reuse the packages of sets or objects in the future stages of the same software itself. That's how, when we are talking about the prioritization, well, it's obvious that we can say it's data-driven project or the data-driven system or data-driven application, but we need to decide if it's data-informed, data-inspired, or data-centric, and then we can say, okay, we will use the algorithms which are pure mathematics. We can decide, okay, the output data is not as the level of accuracy is not enough, so we are treating the project as just a data-informed software. I mean, we are trying to left the decision always to human, and we're saying, okay, we cannot achieve the proper level, and that's why we didn't spend a lot of time to code on exceptions. That's why we need to leave it alone and said the human needs to decide, because we cannot do more in our software. Of course, the plan preparation, despite of the model of operating, is design structure matrix, which is really taking a closer look about the tasks, their relations, and the task dependency on itself. it's really known the model, so I think it's no need to step for that in a longer time. But we need to be conscious, all of us, instead of the fact if we are lawyers or we are the CEOs or we are from the IT team, that when we are talking about data modeling on the very beginning of the project, when we are trying to decide how the whole project will going to look like, we need to just consider three different fields of thinking. I mean, the physical data modeling, logical, and conceptual. Of course, we can have any concept we would like to have, but it's limited of logical or physical possibilities that we already have. But we need to combine it during our thinking about business decision. I mean, how the application which is supporting our business will look like in the future and how our business is going to look like. When we are talking about requirements for data modeling, of course, there are few factors to be considered. I mean, the data accuracy, up-to-date IT infrastructure, qualified professionals, and additional contexts as goals, legal requirements, estimates, user experience, quality of services, optimization, and the list of deliverables. Well, it's pretty easy in that particular moment to say, okay, when we're modeling decisions, it's about data and processes, or some kind of a model which is combining both of those, looking from the angle of tasks which we are going to have, or we are going to discover in the project. The estimates are as follows. Software should meet the requirements and on accuracy of resulting models, which is quite obvious, but we need to do an appropriate choice of adequate and effective algorithms. How to say which are adequate and effective? By testing or by guessing. It's not really some kind of a rocket science. It's sometimes really part of lucky being lucky and just have a good shot, because we are all meeting imperfection, especially when we are talking about the change which may happen in the very next weeks or very next month, because we are not sure what change is going to, we cannot predict everything. So we need to be, in a way, sure that we need to agree to some kind of imperfection in any project. Well, as I said, maybe it's not really that chart, because it's in fact a little bit less space. When we are doing or proceeding the data-driven projects, almost the 75% of the cases it's inefficiency, and the other factors, it's a really smaller part of our activities on the basis of our decisions. And as I can recognize, the quantity is really driven our projects in some way. Maybe it's not really equal 75%, but it's really almost equal 75%. And the quality-driven projects are in the minority. So when we are trying to look at that, what the reality is framing our businesses and our decisions, of course, we should weight factors. So we should use the codes of best practices. We should consider the codification and optimization models. But when you will look at those charts, well, it's really sad because we're humans. We've worked a lot of time for having a lot of exceptions. I mean, not for standards built from 0 to 1. And when we are talking about supporting building the software or develop the software which should support our decisions, it's really obvious that we can say that everything should be standardized and we would like to have just a 0 choice, but we are not the same. And it's really a good time for work on quality, for saying, okay, those cases which are exceptions, though those human beings which are in the minority, they are not supposed to be kicked out of a system or kicked out of the application just because it's hard to code to transfer it into a code that particular mini pattern of existing some kind of samples which are taken into consideration. So before I would like you to take a few minutes on brainstorming session, I would like to share the summary and the business models and standards which are already developed and communicated into our reality. I mean, when we are talking about analytics journey, we can consider the analyze solutions unified methods by IBM and team data science processes by Microsoft, which underlining this. I mean, collection, use, reuse, data preparation, modeling, evaluation, deployment, and dividing our activities on sprints or tasks. And the second part of the standards, which I would like to underline, is the National Institute of Standards and Technology data framework, which focus on framework and vision, plan, analyze, start use and reuse, and preserve, discard. So when we are talking about the standards which are trying to be built and in my particular experience, really experience in the real world, what I would like to appeal for everyone is just to, first of all, be conscious of that we are really able to have solutions which are really able to be reused in the future, just because we spend a little bit longer on conceptual models from the beginning, and then we need to just acknowledge that some systems will be data informed forever, I think, or just for a very long time. So if you have any particular, maybe I will leave it there. If you've got any particular questions or comments or feedbacks or your own experience to be shared in according or a conference to that what I experienced or our team experienced in those particular 2 projects, please please ask questions. I will be very honored to have a chance to share any other remarks with you.
I have received a question for you, Agata. I mean, it's not, you know, it's probably a bit more general, but the question is, in case of extreme cases like slow-moving data and very dynamic data, can we apply the same approach as what you mentioned earlier?
Well, I'm pretty sure. I was really surprised while trying to discover a little bit more or research the central limit theorem. I was really surprised that it really works in any cases. So it was really surprising. But I think that statistic it's not really really fair for us. It's just a statistics. So I think that that particular model should be taken into consideration, even if we should, in a way, divide our project on different stages, in a way, trying to consider one project as a few different ones to be combined in the future on the common basic rules or common standards, which are in a concept on the beginning. I think that we cannot just say, okay, we would like to cover all the exceptions on the first day of working, but when we divide the projects into mini subgroups and mini patterns, it still be applicable to gain the future effect of a complex system. But I think that we should avoid the situation that we are just cutting out all the exceptions and we are saying it's easy to set the general pattern, and we are trying to say, okay, when we will have some kind of a additional exceptions database, maybe in the future we will be able to build a new pattern. No, the Gaussian line, which is quite surprising, will be the same despite of the fact how many samples are we going to experience or to calculate. It's the same line every time. Well, it's quite surprising, but it is.
Thank you. Now I'm checking the chat. I don't see any other specific point coming from our participants for the moment.
Well, I was prepared for a 45 minutes speech, so I thought there will be some questions. I tried to fulfill by my own experiences.
I have another point actually that's been made that I have received in the meantime. You said earlier that we should put our accent, we should stress data instead of processes.
Yeah.
But businesses are, for the moment, currently, businesses are driven by processes. So how can we change that?
Well, it's easy to just design the application when you are just trying to transform the existing process into a digital form. So it's quite easy because all the rules are known. But it's really surprising even when you are discovering what you can do with the data you already have. It's a moment when you are just surprised that you can change the way of focusing the topic. I mean, when you start to analyze the data, you will see how many opportunities were missed in the past just because we followed the process-based methodology. I mean, what we've noticed on the first step, when you are just try to copy the process and the data into a system, and then you already have a data which is digitalized, and you are trying to just take a closer look on that, you see many new opportunities. And then you are just trying to think about some kind of group of data. I mean, the objects were so-called objects in the programming languages. I mean, for those which are really the new ones and the new methodology of coding. And you can see that some of the data or some of the processes just replicating for 1,000 times the same data for different purposes. That's why when we are able to find the patterns which are combining those frequently used sets, it's pretty easy to see what are the other ways to use that sets, and then to build a process on already combined sets of data, which is just the packages. It is also surprising because we as coders, they did just for saving the space on the servers and so on, saving the time, and we collected and aggregated the data into the sets because it was faster. We've noticed that some things are really questioning the same for the same data from the database. So we as that part of the knowledge which is operating on the field of databases, they figured out that it is a possibility to group the data into subgroups and to use it frequently as a statistically popular object. And when you have that objects, and you can see not just an ocean of unordered data, but you see some kind of a plants in the garden. In the one part you've got roses, and on the second one you've got, for example, apples and so on. You can see that there are different processes which can optimize your own work and your processes you've already have. Well, it's not my idea. Well, what you can see, the perfect example is Facebook. When they were collecting data for the process of communicating posts, it was okay. But then they realized that while you're collecting data, grouping it into groups, you can deliver that for the marketing, for the political purposes, for any other purposes that are in your mind very easily, because you already have some part of ordered data organized and put it into the objects which are ready to use for a different purpose. That's what I'm trying to explain in a way of convincing you that we can work that way. I mean, first of all, say, okay, we've got the data. What can we do with that? And then work on procedures, especially because of the fact we don't have some kind of procedures yet. No one could expect pandemic and any need of developing the software, which is trying to find the proper unit for the patient, because we've got a hospitality overflow in the range of 20 kilometers. So we need to search for some place in 100-kilometer distance, and we need to aggregate a lot of data, which is in a chaotic way, in a different way from the different users, because we've got a goal. We need to put the patient who's ill and who's really in need of hospitality. We need to have a chance to find a place, not by calling to the hospitals and not by checking the lists of the vacancies, but we need to have it just for now. So we didn't have any procedure for that. And when we tried to find a procedure in a way basing on booking.com or whatever, which is really aligned with a hospitality reservation, which we discovered that the old-time procedures, which are really which was really good for the public purposes. I mean, for the statistics, how many patients do you have in a hospital? How many of them are young? How many of them are old? And so on and so on. What are the costs for the patient? And we've discovered that when we are trying to rearrange the data just for the purpose of finding the proper place, and we are just we're conscious of the fact that it takes, for example, 30 minutes or 60 minutes just to use a transport and put the person in the proper place. It seems very easy that we've discovered that we can help more than just having one very local hospital which has only 20 places and nothing more, and no vacancy. So I think that when you are trying, we have 3 stages. First is just copying the model, existing model, into digital form. Then you are saying that you already have a data and you can use it for the different purposes, and then you are building a new procedures and modifying the old procedures which are not really compatible with the opportunities that rise just because you've digitalized that which you've already had on paper.
Right. Thank you very much. And I have received another question from a coding and IT infrastructure point of view. What are the best practices to measure the quality of data?
Well, it's a perfect question. I mean, everyone who's running a business would like to know the answer, because even if we are trying to build some kind of of the feedback systems and the measures of quality, we cannot avoid the simple situation that someone is making a joke from us. We cannot be sure. When we have some kind of trusted users who's going to give their sincere opinion about the quality. The user experience field of knowledge is very complicated. It depends of many factors, which some of them are objectively measured and can be set on the beginning, and the rest of them are totally subjective. I mean, we cannot predict what of our, for example, front-end interfaces, models or patterns are going to be accepted by the audience. It depends on the audience. It depends of many different factors, but objectively, we can measure it because we can use the art standards and say, okay, we will not combine the colors which are aggressive, or we will try to implement all the rules which were accepted in the real world. For example, in all the art studies, and they said, okay, it's really nice to have something what you, for example, have in hotels. Everyone loves hotels because they are, in a way, optimized for the user who is going to be happy there. They are not really extremists in any solution because they're using the standard which is applicable for years. The same way we can use of thinking, we can use while we are trying to build the architecture or plan what is going to be our to be the main rules of our solution, but we cannot. Well, actually, we really cannot provide how the audience will react on our solution, and how we can be sure that the feedbacks are really sincere and true. Just because we cannot just well, we can predict that when we have thousands of negative opinions on the service, we can check the IPs and we can check an ID and we can say, okay, it wasn't really the human user experience. It was machine delivered, just because our competition was unhappy that we are trying to build something new. But we cannot be sure. There is no possibility to check if the opinion, I mean the user's opinion and the user's experience are really worth considering. But I think it's the statistic will surprise you again. I mean, the Gaussian line will work on that as usual. I mean, you can just cut off all the extremist opinions, and in the end you will have that mean, which is some kind of a bottom of the opinions. I mean, the average one will be statistically okay.
Thank you very much. I think that has answered at least certainly all the questions that I received separately. I don't know. Yes, we have a couple of questions coming up on the chat now, so I let you go through them.
I would just add one additional sentence. When we are talking about the quality of data, is that what I've mentioned? We've got plenty of data, and it's kind of a work to make a patterns of it. And actually, a very well-built project needs its own database. I mean, even if it's temporary. But you need to order the data. You need to just say, okay, I will put it in my very good order. I mean, I will clean it. I will address some kind of rules for that data, just because I need to have something which is worth working on in the next step. Because it's really hard to work on something which is messy. So we cannot just say, okay, there is a measure to measure a quality of data, but we can improve the quality by own work of building the own database dedicated for the project. It's really worth considering on every project. Because when you are trying to just take something from someone else using an API, you need to rely on his data, and you just you cannot be sure that it's really clean and ordered, and it's going to work well. We are in a first step trying to improve the data set, even if we are gaining that from the API to our particular standard we've set on the beginning. So if there is another question, I will be happy to answer. And if there's some kind of a feedback, I will be happy to answer too, and to hear it.
Yes, you have a question here from Rink, who was one of our speakers earlier on this afternoon. Can you see it?
What do you mean with pattern in the data? I mean, for example, when you are using the Python language for coding, you are building some kind of an object. So when you are, I've got some ability. I don't know if it's really based on of knowledge or intuition, or it's a lucky guess. But I can see that some groups of data are aggregating to build the objects which can be used as the objects in the next step. So when I am talking about the patterns on the data, I can see what particular elements of a set are used in a particular sense, or in a particular approach, or in a particular procedure more frequently than other sets. And what I mean in building the patterns, what are the relations when you will take a deep or a closer look on the database theory, I mean the academic knowledge, you will see that patterns of grouping the data, or using the data, or putting them in a very specific place in a structure is very important for efficiency of operating of database. So it is some part of not just intuitional for business, describing or visualizing the relation between some informations or some actions, but it also should be placed in the fundaments of the proper and effective database constructing models. I think it in a way covered your question.
Thank you very much, Agata. I think this is it. I mean, there's no other question on the chat. I haven't received anything else in the meantime, and I think you deserve a rest because it's been a very long session for you. Very interesting, full of information. So thank you very, very much for this.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of track 3 for today, the end of our conference until tomorrow. I think that we have managed to get through the afternoon despite the technical hiccups that we had all along. I certainly would like to thank all our speakers for sharing their experience, their solutions, their proposals, and all their knowledge. Thank you all for being with us this afternoon and for your active participation, including through the chat. Just a reminder, all the presentations and the recordings will be available on the ENDORSE website at some point next week, so you can listen again to some of the presentations that were given this afternoon. And before you left, when you leave, you will see there is a survey on Slido. Now, it's a different survey from the one that was running throughout the afternoon. This is a survey to ask you about future suggestions. So please, please take it. It's only going to be a minute or so, but it is very important for us, for the organizers, to have your suggestions. It was a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow afternoon. Have a very nice evening, relax, mull over all you've learned and heard today, and see you tomorrow. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.